So we're going to get started talking about how to guarantee sales in the federal market on as a small business. But today we're going to be talking about making sales happen, right? And how can you actually guarantee sales are happening? If you haven't heard me talk about the 7-step process before, sales happens when you do the right things. And we'll talk about this today. But basically, it's writing winning proposals, having slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline, strategic relationships with other companies, and then doing a lot of the right activity before you even build a relationship. When you do these, you're going to have sales success. You're going to have repeatable, predictable results. You'll hear me say this over and over again, that's what I want you to have. And so for today, we're going to be talking about understanding the numbers. I'm really going to dive into how do you line up your numbers so that you can be aiming for a particular activity. And then identifying bottlenecks. I really want to talk about if you're not getting the outcome that you want, how do you look back in the process and go, well, what am I not doing quite right that could fit this? And then the last thing I'm going to end up with in today's training is give you activity that you should be doing on a regular basis. So let's go ahead and get started on that. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald, president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training. I spent 20 years as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. And when we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. If you haven't done this already, go ahead and put your company name and your core competency into the chat so we know who you are. Let others know if you're open to connecting on LinkedIn. And I had one quick question for you. For those who feel comfortable putting stuff in the chat, I'm really curious on whether you wrote down your 2023 sales goals. And in a minute, you'll see that those sales goals should not be about 2023. They're about your 2024 and beyond revenue goals, right? And so I'm curious, have you written down what's in there? So by the way, if you're tracking on this, you can definitely switch over to our LinkedIn company page. So just look at my profile and click on that, or you can go to YouTube out there. And then I'll just let the team talk about that. Okay, so let's get rocking and rolling, starting with the numbers, right? I want you to understand the numbers around the goal that you're trying to achieve. And so the first thing I want to start with is just some terms that I use. There's all sorts of ways people talk about things, but I like bringing it down into very clear terms that are easy for me to understand and which I hope are also easy for you to understand. And so the first goal or first term that I use is revenue, right? And this is literally meaning money in my hands, money in the bank. If I don't have it, then it's just all sorts of other variations of it. And so revenue is just money in hand. And we'll talk more deeply about that. That's your goal for next year. For example, you're going to have a 2024 goal. Your goal is for revenue. How much money do we want our company to make? I take revenue then and I break it into what I call a run rate, right? A run rate just to me means, am I at a $1.2 million run rate level or company? Am I bringing in enough money that at any 12 months, I'm going to be bringing in 1.2 million or 50 million or whatever. I want to know what my run rate is so that I don't wait till the end of the year to find out if I'm going to hit my annual goals or my annual revenue goals. I'm going to see that on a monthly basis, even weekly basis if you want. For me, monthly is more than enough. So then sales is about the contract awards I'm getting. So just keep that in mind. When I say, what's your sales goal? It really is how much contract win value do you want? That's your sales goal. How much do you need? It's determined based on your revenue, which you'll see in a second. And then going down from that, right? I'm just kind of reverse engineering through the pipeline. The next thing is proposals, right? How many proposals am I looking to get out the door? And in this particular sense, I need to have a goal around that. And this means a proposal I wrote and sent to the contracting officer on time. That's what I mean by proposals sent. And these terms are important to understand how do you hit your sales goals in a minute and your revenue goals. And so the last term that I'm going to use when I'm talking about understanding your number is pipeline. Your pipeline value, and what I put here is at the capture stage of bid. If you're familiar with the capture or sales pipeline, there's different stages. For example, lead or qualified, and then it goes to pursue, then it goes to bid, depending on what your company has. But basically, I look at, qualified, pursue, bid, and proposal. And at each stage, as you move it forward, it has more value to your company because you've done more research. And so in this particular case, the only pipeline value I really care about for today are the opportunities in your sales pipeline that have advanced through capture far enough that they're in the bid stage. Now, for some of you, that's just a time exercise, but for most of us, it should be a capture exercise. And so that is that's a little quick summary on the terms. Now let's dive into actually understanding your numbers, in particular your revenue goal. And for those of you who are not, who are off camera for whatever reason, my screen's not sharing, etc. I'll just walk through what I have here. So I'm setting a revenue goal for 2024 of 1.2 million. I'm saying that my fictional company, I want to have brought in my account, my bank account, 1.2 million. It's not enough for it to be coming in January 2025. That is not 2024 revenue, right? So 2024 revenue is money that came into my bank account. It's that simple to me as a business owner. And so I set my goal for 1.2 million. You can set your goal higher. You could set it for 12 million. You could set it for 120 million. It doesn't matter. These numbers are basically the same. You're just reverse engineering. The more money your company has, the more people who get in and try to add complexity to the whole idea of numbers. But the reality is, when you think about numbers, it's just coming down to how much do you want to bring in. So I set it at 1.2 million. At a run rate, when I said I want to have a run rate in my head, so 2024 monthly run rate means I need to be bringing in $100,000 per month. That means if I'm pure federal government, the government needs to be sending me a check, or electronically, right? But sending me a check for $100,000 every single month. I need to be getting $100,000 a month into my account every single month in 2024 in order to bring in 1.2 million in revenue. It's really important to kind of keep that in mind. The reason you want to look at the months is because you can begin to predict whether you're going to hit your annual goal and whether you're okay with missing it or whether you really step up the activities to achieve that annual goal. So let's talk about, like, if you're looking at $100,000 a month, that's if you start receiving revenue in January 2024. You need to get $100,000 a month starting in January in order to get 1.2 million at the end of the year of 2024. If you don't start making any money, like no money is coming into the bank until, let's say, March, well, then you need to sit there and be bringing in 120,000 to still try to hit that $1.2 million 2024 revenue goal. Hopefully that makes sense there, right? And that same number can keep going forward. This is why you need to know, like, have your run rate, your monthly run rate. So right away, your team can see, man, we got to be bringing this in sooner. Otherwise, the lift is going to be tougher at the end. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world, right? You could still bring, not bring in revenue in the first 3 months of 2024 and still hit that $1.2 million goal or the $12 million goal. You'll just have to be doing more billing, right, in the later months. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's the revenue. And so the reason I have that in mind is that's driving all the next numbers I'm going to be thinking about. So keep in mind as we move forward, that $1.2 million goal is our scenario. That's $100,000 a month revenue. Okay, so now when you move forward, and the next thing I want you to think about is, how do you get that revenue? Before I even get to my sales, I want to think about, how does that revenue even come into my company? How am I making money? And so in this particular case, the 2024 revenue goal is 1.2 million. I'm saying I want to make 1.2 million. Well, how many people do I need to be billing at client sites in order to be bringing in 1.2 million in revenue? The next exercise I have here are 5 bullets. And for those of you who can see the screen, you can see what I have here, but I'll describe it for you. The first thing I want you to do, the first number you have to put in your mind is, what's the average hourly rate for all of your billable employees? I don't need you to say depends. Depends means you're afraid to answer the question, right? You want to say, well, our average hourly rate is this. It's okay if you sit there and say, well, I got a $50 an hour person, I got a $40 an hour person, I got a $200 an hour person. That's cool. Just write them down really quick, add them up, divide them, and you got your average hourly rate, right? You can figure that out. You can look and go, well, I got a lot more $40 an hour than $200 an hour. Okay, then adjust the numbers. But it shouldn't take you more than 5-10 minutes to come up with your average hourly rate for your company. The reason this is important is because you just need to put a stake in the ground to drive all the other activity. If you say depends, then you just are you're interfering with your ability to do all the other planning. So for my companies, pretty much all of my government contracting time, my average hourly rate was $125 an hour. And so I like that number because when I think about the average annual revenue I can get from an employee, a full-time equivalent employee, who works through that year is $250,000. The easy math, right? I love easy math. The easy math is to double the hourly rate and you have the annual revenue. If you double the hourly rate of $125 an hour, that gives you a number of $250,000 a year in expected revenue, right? At a normal 1,880 hour type billable thing. So when I think about that, I go, okay, if my average hourly rate is $125 an hour, then I know that I'm going to be able to expect one FTE, one full-time equivalent, one person to bring in $250,000 a year. And going back, sticking with that monthly run rate that I have, right? I want to know how much is that person bringing in per month. And for me, 250,000 divided by 12 is basically like 28,000. But for easy math, I rounded down and I said, okay, that employee is going to bring in $25,000 a month. I know that my company monthly revenue goal, that run rate is $100,000 a month is where I want to be at. And so if every average employee is bringing in 25,000 and I want 100,000 per month, then I need 4 people billing, 4 FTEs, full-time equivalent. So in a simple exercise with math, I put in my head that I just need 4 people next year billing out at $125 an hour, and I will bring in 1.2 million in revenue. If I wanted 12 million in revenue, I just throw a 0 on, right? A 0 onto the revenue and a 0 onto the FTEs. So I would need 40 FTEs next year to bring in 12 million. Well, okay, so then you just begin to think about your efforts. So hopefully that made sense there. Let me move on to the next slide here where we talk about your sales goals. So I talked about revenue and I talked about thinking about the FTEs, the people who were responsible for this activity. So now let's think about how are you going to make that happen through your sales activities? Just as a refresher, our 2024 revenue goal, how much money we want to bring in, is 1.2 million for 2024, right? For next year. So that means our sales goal is for 2023. This year, our sales goal should be 6 million. We still have 5 months left in the year, right? If I want 1.2 million next year, then I need to bring in $6 million this year. What does that mean? Why do I need to bring in 6 million if I want 1.2 next year? Well, the reason is because for most contracts, you have a 5-year pop. Anything can change and that's fine, but 5-year period of performance is a really conservative way of looking at your numbers. So instead of saying that I just need 1.2 million in sales or 2.4 million, I'm going to the extreme and saying, generally, if I win a contract, it's going to be a 5-year contract, and that's 6 million. So my sales goal for 2023 is 6 million. I need to win $6 million in contract value, contract awards in 2023 in order to be pretty confident that I'm going to bring in $1.2 million in 2024 to meet my revenue goal, because 1.2 million times 5 is 6 million. Hopefully that makes sense. So I have a revenue goal of 1.2, a sales goal of 6 million, but a sales goal is just what I want awarded to me. I need to back it up now in the process. Remember, you have a sale in the 7-step process. You have sales and you have proposals and opportunities. So I just said the sales goal is 6 million. So my proposals sent to the government, to the buyer, that goal is 24 million. And let me pause for a second. On all my math from this point forward, I just use a 25% win rate. I just say across the board, I expect that I have a 25% win rate. You have to decide yourself, what number is the right number for your company, right? Whether it's a little higher percentage or maybe you only win 10%. Do your numbers. You can adjust it based on it, but just know that I'm using a 25% win rate. What I mean is every 4 times I do something, 1 time it'll win. Every 4 million, 1 million will win, right? That kind of thing. So my goal for 2023 sales is 6 million. 4 times 6 million is 24 million. That means my proposals that have to go out the door need to be valued at 24 million in order for me to expect to win $6 million in contract value at a 25% win rate. You can come back and watch the replay, right? But a couple of guidelines in here. The proposals you send can be no bigger than 6 million. This is kind of rules that I put in place. If I was managing your pipeline, et cetera, if your goal is $6 million in sales, that's the upper limit of any opportunity value to your projection. So let me try to say it this way. It does us no good to send one proposal and have it be a $24 million proposal, because we only win 1 out of 4 proposals. So if all I do is send one proposal at the full goal value, then I'm not giving myself a chance to win. So I want to give myself a 25% chance to win. I need to send at least 4 proposals valued at $6 million each in order to expect to win $6 million in contract value. You can definitely go up. You can write 24 proposals and send them at $1 million a piece in all sorts of variations. But I'm just saying, no matter how big your proposal value is going out, only count 6 million of it in our scenario today when your goal is a $6 million sale and a 1.2 million in revenue. So that would be 4 million in revenue, or proposals. The last part that I have here is, if you think about, you have a revenue goal of 1.2 million, a 2023 sales goal of 6 million, a proposal goal sent out of 24 million, then you go back into your pipeline, and I'll talk about this from a different angle in a second, but if you go back into your pipeline, then you should expect the value of your pipeline to be at least 96 million. You need to have $96 million worth of value in your pipeline in the bid stage, that furthest along opportunity. Again, it follows the same rule of saying no opportunity in your pipeline can count for more than 6 million. You can certainly participate on an opportunity that is 60 million for all I care. It doesn't matter. But in our forecasting of our efforts, we only count that up to 6 million. If you win it, you're off to the races. That's exciting, right? You hit all your goals. But in the opportunity, in the pipeline, you want to make sure each opportunity, you're only counting it up to 6 million. And when you do that, and you know that you're trying to achieve 96 million in value in your pipeline, you'll know that you can only have 19 opportunities. You need to have at least 19 opportunities in the pipeline. Hopefully that made sense. I know it's a lot of numbers, so you can come back and watch the replay. This is a very fast training and small training. It's something that takes like a whole day and really months of consulting to teach you. But if you come back and look at these numbers and put your own numbers in where I have stuff, you will all of a sudden start having goals. By the way, if you have questions from the training, this is our website I'm showing at the moment, but we have an Ask Me Anything button on there. It's open 24/7. So just click on it and ask us anything. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. But I want to make sure you know that the GovCon Chamber is there to answer your government contracting questions. Okay, so let's talk about, so we set the numbers, right? But what if we're looking at our activity and we're saying we're not hitting any of the goals we're trying to do, or we're not achieving the outcome that we expect to achieve? Well, how can you look at your process? How can your company look internally and say, well, what are we doing wrong? Or what could we do better in order to make sure that we're achieving the outcome and the goals that we set for ourselves? And so here I brought back the 7-step process, and it really is literally asking yourself some questions, right? The first one is, if I'm not making enough, either if I'm not making sales at all, or I'm not making enough sales, and remember, sales means contract wins. If I'm not winning enough contracts, then I would submit you're not writing enough winning proposals. But if you think you're writing winning proposals, you can start going back, right? If you're not writing, or if you don't have enough winning proposals going out, do you have slam dunk opportunities, or are the opportunities in your pipeline kind of all over the place? I hear about people, they write a lot of proposals, or they have a lot of opportunities in the pipeline, but are they all narrowed down to cybersecurity? Are they all narrowed down to Elevator or SharePoint services, et cetera? Do you know your slam dunk opportunity? I have a whole separate training on how do you define that for your company. But if you have enough slam dunk opportunities in the pipeline, then you're going to be able to write winning proposals. And when you write enough winning proposals, you will be able to start winning more. Going with this thread, right? Number 3, if you don't have enough slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline, you're looking in there, you go, I just don't have enough. Then you have to ask yourself, do we have enough strategic relationships? And you probably don't. So you need to build more strategic relationships. Strategic relationships are ones you have with agency and industry partners where you are able to hear about opportunities. They know what you do, they know what you're great at, and they'll let you know about opportunities. They'll invite you in for discussions, etc. Number 4, right? If you don't have enough of these strategic relationships, and I'll define in a second how you can kind of measure them, but and I have a whole separate training on strategic relationships. If you don't have enough strategic relationships, then the problem in your bottleneck maybe is that you're not calling enough people, and so you need to call more people. But if you're not calling enough people, right? If you're not calling enough people to lead to strategic relationships, what's causing that? Well, it could be that you don't have a target list, right? We talk about building a target list that leads to that has 200 people in it that you can call at your target agency. If you haven't built that list, then how can you reach out and call people? And if you don't know how to build that list, if you kind of run out of steam, you're like, I don't know who else to call, then you need to do more research. And really what I did was just walk back through the 7-step process. If you're having a problem, look to the step before it and go, am I doing enough of that? If you are writing, and if your proposals are all winning, but you're not putting out enough winning proposals, then it leads you back to the opportunity, and so on and so on. Okay, so last thing I want to try to wrap up here with is I want to give you 3 things that you should be doing. And I just did daily, weekly, and monthly in here. But these are 3 things that can be the right things that you can do that will lead to success. At the beginning, when I talked about the training is how to have guaranteed sales. Guaranteed sales doesn't come from the government. Guaranteed sales comes from our activity. And so I want to talk about some of the right things that you can be doing that will lead you down that path towards hitting all your goals, your revenue goals, your sales goals, etc., giving you that guaranteed success. Guaranteed success is just about doing the right things the right way and enough of the right things, right? When you do those, you're going to hit the mark every time. So the first thing I want you to do is call 5 people every day. 5 people, right? It takes 15 minutes to call 5 people at most. Most people don't even answer the phone, right? So it could take 5 minutes to call 5 people. But you call them, you leave a voicemail. These are brand new people. These are not existing relationships. You call 5 new people every single day. And when you call them, you're calling, leaving a voicemail saying, hey, I'd like to schedule an introduction meeting, right? There's a whole training on how to do all that. But you're calling to do that, and then you follow up a little later with an email. That entire activity takes 15 minutes. Even if you called people in the morning and came back and sent an email in the afternoon, it's a 15-minute task. When you do that, calling 15 people every day, and you do it for 2 weeks, and I'll come back to the reason I like 2 weeks is because it fits with the next bullet. But 2 weeks, that's only a 2.5-hour commitment. Out of an 80-hour workday, if you spend 2.5 hours, you're going to reach out to 50 new people every 2 weeks. We do this with our customers, and they're setting up meetings every single week kind of thing, right? You can do this yourself just by picking up the phone, calling 50 new people. If you do that every week through the year for 50 weeks, right? Take 2 weeks on vacation. If you do that, then you're going to call 1,250 new people every single year. Imagine calling that many buyers, that many large primes, that many small primes, and teaming partners across both industries, right? When you call those people, the right people are going to be appreciating that you call them, and they're going to connect with you and say, hey, we've got opportunities. Hey, I want a long-term relationship. Hey, let's write a proposal together, right? So call 5 people every day. There cannot be any excuse for missing this, right? That should be something you do every single day. 15 minutes, start of your day. Second thing I want you to do is every 2 weeks, have these bi-weekly meetings with strategic partners. And again, watch my training on it. But when you schedule meetings with 8 strategic partners, these are people, companies that are already winning contracts, right? So I don't mean 3 million and below small businesses. Those are great people. Keep meeting with them, but they're not strategic in the way I describe strategic. Strategic teaming partners are ones that can help you reach your goal all by themselves. So if your goal is 1.2 million, whatever small business you're working with, make sure they're at a threshold that they're winning already. They're going after more proposals. They've got a process, and get in there. Certainly keep the other activity you have, but I'm just talking about every 2 weeks, have a regularly scheduled meeting with large prime and small prime strategic partners. These meetings are 30 minutes. You're talking about a pipeline. At most, they're 30 minutes, right? You're talking about a pipeline. You're talking about things you want to do together going into an agency. When you do this with 8 partners at 30 minutes, it's 4-hour commitment, right? Every 2 weeks, it's 4 hours. So now we've got 6.5 hours where you're meeting with strategic partners and you're calling new people. This is huge. These are the right activities as you move forward. And the last thing is write 4 proposals each month. And I did a whole training on this as well on many times about how to write proposals, not from a proposal manager's perspective, but from sales. But write 4 proposals each month. Only write them in your sweet spot, your core competency, right? And the key is you can make them all where you're a subcontractor. So just find your strategic partners, get on teams, get on enough teams where the total are sending out 4 proposals every month. You could do that as a sub, and your lift is tiny. They'll ask you to write a couple of pages around your subject matter expertise, but these are the goals you should be trying for: 5 every day, meeting with 8 strategic partners every 2 weeks, and then write 4 proposals each month. Okay, so what I want you to remember from today's training, and I know it's really fast, and I'm probably actually going to come back and do it again because of the technical hiccup, but remember these things, right? In order to have success in government contracting, you need to understand your goals, your numbers. Look at your process and identify the bottlenecks that are preventing you from having success farther down the line. And then the last thing, number 3, is just do the right things. Do the right things the right way and enough of the right things, that activity, and it will lead to success as you go forward. I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow we're going to do another training, and this one is how to grow your government contracting business from 0 to 1 million, from 1 million to 100 million. And really, I'm talking about tomorrow the process of going through that stage as you go forward. It's really a strategic looking type training as well. So join me in that one. And for everybody, remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.